I never expected to hear his voice again. Not after 37 years, not in a grocery store parking lot on a Tuesday evening when the air smelled like rain and regret. Emma. Just my name. Soft, uncertain. Like he wasn't sure I'd turn around, but I did. I turned because some voices don't fade. They settle into your bones and wait. And his had been waiting a very long time. He stood 3 cars away, hands in the pockets of a wool coat that looked too big for him. His hair was silver now, thinning at the temples. But his eyes, those hadn't changed. Still that same shade of gray-blue, like winter sky before snow. For a moment, neither of us moved. The parking lot felt too small and too wide at the same time. I was 60 years old and suddenly I was 23 again, standing in a different parking lot watching him walk away because I didn't know how to make him stay. My bags shifted in my hands and the small movement seemed to give him permission. Daniel. I didn't say his name out loud, but my heart did. It beat once, hard like it remembered something my mind had tried to forget. He took a step forward, hesitated, then took another. His gait was slower than I remembered. The years had touched him the way they touch all of us. Gently at first, then all at once. His hands came out of his pockets. One of them held a small brown envelope, creased and soft from years of handling. Stay with me through this moment, and if you feel it too, tap subscribe and tell me where you're watching from. The edges were worn white. He held it carefully, the way you hold something that might fall apart if you're not gentle. I should have walked away. I had 2 bags of groceries in my trunk and a dinner to make for myself. A quiet dinner, the kind I'd gotten used to since Richard passed 3 years ago. But I didn't walk away. I stayed. Daniel stopped a few feet from me, close enough that I could see the faint tremor in his hands, close enough that I could smell the faint scent of cedar and soap, familiar in a way that made my chest ache. He looked at me the way you look at something you thought you'd lost forever, like he was afraid to blink in case I disappeared. Emma, he said again, quieter this time. I've been looking for you. The world felt strange and tilted. My mouth opened, but no sound came. What do you say to someone who disappeared from your life before you even knew why? What do you say when 37 years stand between you like a wall made of silence? He saw my hesitation. He always could. Even now, even after all this time, he could read the small shifts in my expression. I know, he said softly. I know it's been a long time, but I need you to hear something. Just once. Please. His voice cracked on the word, please. I looked at the envelope in his hand. It seemed too small to hold anything important, but the way he gripped it told me otherwise. The weight of that envelope told me this wasn't just an apology. I don't know why I agreed to meet him the next day. Maybe because the envelope felt heavier than paper. Maybe because I'd spent 37 years wondering what I did wrong. Maybe because I was tired of living with questions that had no answers. That night, I didn't sleep well. I lay in bed and watched the shadows move across the ceiling. The house was too quiet since Richard died. But tonight the silence felt different. It felt like anticipation. I thought about Daniel's face in the parking lot, the lines around his mouth, the way his shoulders seemed smaller than I remembered, the coat that hung loose on his frame. I thought about the envelope, and I thought about Sarah Connolly. The memory still hurt, even after all these years. The way she'd shown up at my apartment that summer, her eyes red from crying, her hands shaking as she told me Daniel was the father of her baby, that he'd been seeing her for months, that I deserved to know the truth. I'd believed her. Why wouldn't I? She seemed so certain, so hurt, so broken. And when I confronted Daniel, he'd looked at me like I'd struck him. He denied it, said it wasn't true, begged me to trust him, but I didn't. I couldn't. The doubt had already rooted itself too deep, so I walked away. I moved to the next town. I met Richard. I built a life. I had children. I became someone else, and I never looked back until now. We met at a cafe I didn't recognize, on the edge of town where the trees still held their copper leaves. The light through the window was soft and golden, the kind of autumn light that makes everything look a little kinder than it is. Daniel was already there when I arrived, sitting by the window with 2 cups of tea cooling in front of him. He stood when I walked in. That small gesture, standing, felt like an apology I hadn't asked for yet. I sat across from him, suddenly aware of how nervous my hands felt. He slid one of the cups toward me. It was chamomile, my favorite. He still remembered. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. I watched the steam curl up from the tea. Daniel watched me. Then he placed the envelope on the table between us. "This," he said, "is why I left." I stared at it. It wasn't sealed. The flap was tucked in loosely, like he'd opened it and closed it 100 times, like he'd read whatever was inside until the words were memorized. "I don't understand," I said. My voice sounded thin. His jaw tightened. "You weren't supposed to. That was the whole problem." He leaned back in his chair and exhaled slowly, the kind of breath that carries years. His hands rested on the table, palms down, fingers spread like he was bracing himself. "Do you remember Sarah Connolly?" he asked. The name pulled something sharp from my memory. Sarah. The woman who worked at the diner downtown. The one with dark curly hair and a nervous laugh. The one who came to my apartment with tears in her eyes and a story I didn't want to believe. She told me Daniel was the father of her baby, and I believed her. I looked at Daniel now, older and quieter, and felt the old ache resurface. It hadn't gone away. It had just learned to stay quiet. "She lied," he said simply. I blinked. "What?" "She lied, Emma. The baby wasn't mine. It was never mine." He pushed the envelope closer. His fingertips brushed the edge of it, then pulled back. "Open it." My hands shook as I pulled the paper free. Inside was a letter, handwritten, faded, dated 2 years after Daniel and I ended. The ink had turned brown with age. The paper felt fragile. It was addressed to him. "I'm sorry," it began. I read the words slowly. Each one felt like a stone dropping into water. "I'm sorry for what I did. I was scared and desperate, and I thought if I could make you believe it, maybe I could make myself believe it too. But the baby wasn't yours. It was never yours. It was someone else's. Someone who didn't want me. And I thought if I said it was you, you'd stay. But you didn't. And Emma left you anyway. I ruined 2 lives because I was too afraid to face my own. I'm writing this because I can't carry it anymore. I hope you can forgive me. I hope she can too. But I understand if you can't." I read the words twice, 3 times. My throat felt tight. My vision blurred at the edges. "She sent this to you?" I whispered. 2 years later," Daniel said, "after you'd already married Richard, after I'd already lost you." His voice was flat, empty, like he'd said these words to himself so many times they'd lost their shape. But the photographs he kept weren't the hardest thing to see. He reached into his jacket again and pulled out a small stack of photographs held together with a rubber band that looked like it might snap. He set them on the table beside the letter. "I kept looking for you," he said. "I didn't know where you'd gone. Your family wouldn't tell me. Your friends wouldn't talk to me. So I kept pieces. Things that reminded me you were real." He slid the stack toward me. I picked it up carefully, as if it might fall apart. The first photo was of us at the county fair, 23 years old, standing in front of the Ferris wheel. My head was on his shoulder. His arm was around my waist. We looked impossibly young, impossibly happy. The second photo was of me alone, walking across a street I didn't recognize. I was wearing a blue dress I'd forgotten I owned. I hadn't known he was there, hadn't known he'd been watching. The third was a newspaper clipping, my name in the local announcements, my wedding to Richard. The paper had yellowed. Someone had circled my name in pencil. He'd kept it. He'd kept all of it. The fourth photo was of him, younger, standing in front of a house I didn't recognize. He looked tired, thin, like he'd been carrying something too heavy for too long. I couldn't stop the tears. They came quietly, the way grief does when it's been waiting too long. I pressed my palm against my mouth, but it didn't help. Daniel reached across the table and rested his hand near mine, not touching, just close. Close enough that I could feel the warmth of it. "I'm not asking you to forgive me for leaving," he said. "I'm asking you to know the truth, that I didn't want to, that I thought I was protecting you, that every single year since then I've thought about you, that I looked for you, that I never stopped." His voice caught on the last word. I wiped my eyes with the heel of my hand. My voice came out rough and small. "I had a whole life, Daniel. I had children. I had Richard. I know he was a good man. I know. And he's gone now." Daniel's face softened. The lines around his eyes deepened. "I know that too. I'm sorry." We sat in the silence that followed. It wasn't uncomfortable. It was just honest. The kind of silence that doesn't need to be filled. Outside, someone laughed. A door opened and closed. Life continued around us, oblivious. I didn't expect his voice to break when he said my name again. "Why now?" I asked finally. "Why find me now?" "Because," he said, "I'm 62 years old, Emma, and I don't have another 37 years. His honesty was so plain it hurt. There was no drama in it, no pleading, just fact. I looked down at the photos in my hands, at the letter, at the 37 years we'd both carried alone, at all the ways we'd been broken by someone else's lie. "I don't know what you want me to say," I whispered. He shook his head. "I don't want you to say anything. I just wanted you to know. That's all. I wanted you to know you didn't do anything wrong, that it wasn't your fault, that I loved you." He paused. His jaw worked like he was trying to swallow something sharp. "That I still do." The words hung in the air between us, quiet, undeniable. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt something shift, not urgently, not loudly, just softly, like a door I didn't know was locked finally opening. I stood up. Daniel looked at me, confused, maybe afraid I was leaving, but I didn't leave. I walked around the table. I sat down next to him instead of across from him, close enough that our shoulders almost touched, and when I reached for his hand, I finally understood what it meant to choose myself. He turned toward me, careful, like I might disappear if he moved too fast. His hand closed around mine, warm, rough in places from years I didn't know about, but it fit the way I remembered. "Emma," he said, "you don't have to." "I know," I said, "but I want to." He looked at me like he couldn't believe I was real, like he was afraid to trust it. "I don't know what happens next," I said quietly. "I don't know if this makes sense. I don't even know if we're the same people anymore." "We're not," he said, "but maybe that's okay." I leaned my head against his shoulder the way I used to, and he didn't pull away. His other hand came up, hesitant, and rested gently on my arm. Outside, the autumn light was fading. The cafe was warm. Somewhere in the distance, I could hear the soft hum of life continuing around us. But for the first time in 37 years, I wasn't thinking about what I'd lost. I was thinking about what I still had. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. We sat like that for a long time. Neither of us spoke. We didn't need to. Sometimes the most important things are said in silence. What would you do if the person who once broke you spoke your name again, decades later?